What if I told you there was a treasure worth over $10 million right here in front of you, but it wasn't actually real treasure at all? How would you react to that? Would you laugh at me? Maybe you'd think I've gone insane. To be honest, that's probably what I thought too when this happened to me. I never expected to find anything valuable, let alone the treasure I'll talk about later. The thing is, it was hidden inside something completely worthless. And it just goes to show you that sometimes appearances can be deceiving. My dad and I brought the huge wooden chest down the stairs and into the back of my pickup truck. It was very heavy, so I knew it wasn't hollow. They were military-style grenades that looked like they could cause a lot of damage. After asking us a few questions, they loaded the box into their vehicle and took it away. When they returned, they said they couldn't find any identifying marks on the grenades to tell where they may have come from. They suggested that we should try to get in touch with the army, so that's exactly what we did. He checked them and confirmed they were inert, meaning they were old and wouldn't explode if they were thrown. Still, you never know with stuff like that, so my dad and I were happy to let him keep them. We contacted a local recruitment office and explained our situation. And fortunately, they were able to connect us with someone who knew more about military equipment. And since they weren't actually dangerous anymore, they asked if we could have them. Fortunately for me, he agreed. He dug through the layers of protective packaging until he came across something that seemed to be hiding underneath everything else. When he removed the towels, he opened the lid and revealed a stack of envelopes. On the outside of each envelope was a red wax seal. And even though it was old, it still looked like it could have been used yesterday. There was a total of 10 bars, and they weighed for 100 troy ounces each. But it sparkled brilliantly in the light, and it looked like something that belonged to a queen or princess. My dad carefully picked up the ring and inspected it closely. In addition to the gold, there was also a single diamond ring sitting on top. Of course, neither of us knew for certain what we were looking at, but we had a feeling that this was no ordinary ring. At this point, I still hadn't had a chance to look inside the box and see what else might have been in there. You see, my grandfather had written down a number of different storage locations and hidden treasures on pieces of paper and put them inside the envelopes. He must have made several trips back and forth between houses because he left behind many more boxes that were filled with money and valuable items. I'm not entirely sure how the carpenter handled them after he saw what they were, but I remember him looking at us with wide eyes and then calling the police. But even though we had become millionaires overnight, none of us could figure out where the money had come from. To this day, I wonder where it came from and how my grandfather managed to hide it from everyone. Curious, the military man and my dad exchanged glances. He enjoyed fishing, gardening, and spending time with his grandchildren. He never bragged about his job, and he was always humble. In total, the treasure we found in that box was worth more than $10 million. Because of what we found, our entire family's financial situation changed. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up. But that goes to show you that you never really know what people are up to or what they have hidden from you. But every time I hold one of those gold bars in my hands, I can't help but wonder whose it is and if they'll ever come knocking on our doors demanding it back. Then he pulled out one of the envelopes and handed it to my dad since he was older. But because he left us such a big secret, we're now in possession of things that rightfully belong to someone else. While he was alive, he never gave us any indication of that. He was the best grandfather anyone could ask for. That is why today I want to share with you an interesting story I came across while going through one of my grandfather's storage rooms after he passed away. Sometime after he passed away, my father and I went to clean out the old house. But at the same time, I feel a bit bad about the way everything went down. But at that point, I didn't care about the money anymore. I just wanted to know what else was in the box. But no one was laughing. We sat there dumbfounded while realizing that we had stumbled upon something extremely valuable. So we did. The lawyer met us at his office, and after verifying that the gold was indeed real, he estimated its value to be well over $1 million. And while we were going through my grandfather's bedroom, we found a big wooden chest hidden under his bed. Because if my grandfather had known those things were in there, I doubt he would have stored them in a place like that. And considering he worked for the government, he likely had a good reason for keeping the chest hidden. Not long after, he called us and said he'd done some digging and found out they were from a conflict that happened way back in World War II. My grandfather had worked for the government most of his life, and shortly before he died, he was offered a position in another country, which he accepted. This meant he had to pack up his entire life and move to a new place, but he only had a limited amount of time to do so. Once the lock was removed, he pried open the lid, and my eyes immediately opened wide in shock. There was something inside that I never would have guessed. So he hired some friends to help him pack up most of his belongings and ship them off. However, there were some items that he wanted to keep with him, and so he took these into the new house himself. We didn't know what was inside, and since it was so heavy, we decided to take it to a local carpenter to see if he could open it up and hopefully identify any valuable antiques or maybe even jewelry. When we arrived at the carpenter shop, we put it down on a work table, and the owner got to work using a hacksaw to cut through the metal bar lock. It was filled to the brim with brand new 40mm grenades. Before long, bomb disposal experts arrived and quickly confiscated the box. So my dad and I went back to the house and waited for the authorities to come back with whatever it was they had found. Of course, we agreed, but we still had no idea what to do with them. This guy was really nice, and he even invited us to bring the box over to his house so he could take a closer look. He also said he'd tried to figure out where they may have originally come from, but since they were so old, he wasn't optimistic about finding out. He said the grenades themselves weren't actually valuable, but they could definitely be sold for parts. While we had been holding onto the grenades, I kept thinking there must have been other things inside the chest, so I asked the military guy if he could go through the rest of the stuff in the box and see what else he could find. It was a small wooden box, almost entirely covered up by towels and clothing. There was also a handwritten note attached to the box that simply said, "Don't open these until you're 21. The envelope felt thick and heavy, and when my dad opened it, he revealed a pile of gold bars. It wasn't a big ring. In fact, it was quite small. And even though he isn't a jeweler, he said it looked like high-quality diamonds. I couldn't believe my eyes. This had to be some kind of joke. At this point, the military man suggested we contact a lawyer who specializes in dealing with precious metals and jewels. He also took the ring and determined that it was authentic and worth approximately $250,000. But believe it or not, it gets crazier. In all, my family received approximately $30 million worth of treasure thanks to my grandfather. We tried searching online and going through important documents, but we never learned the true origin of the treasure. The most shocking part to me is that he was an ordinary man who lived a simple life. So I'm really surprised that he was able to acquire so much wealth. After finding all this treasure, I began to suspect that my grandfather was involved in something shady. And so I hope that someday I'll find out what he did to earn so much money and where he got the valuables. I am grateful for that because it relieved a lot of stress and allowed us to enjoy our lives a little more. If my grandfather had told us about the money and shown us where it was hidden, I'm sure we would have understood and respected his wishes. I don't know who that someone is or whether they'll ever find out what happened. Thanks for watching.